Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back with another Final Fantasy Commander deck profile. Today with Vivi Ornitier. It allows you to get some additional mana for Vivi's power. He does start out at 0, but by casting plenty of non-creature spells, we get him plenty of power in order to deal that damage by getting that power as well. So we have plenty of spells in here that deal non-combat damage, plenty of spells that are essentially either cheap enough to cast where we don't care about their casting cost, or essentially free to cast by the time you're done casting them, or just free to cast in general, like Mishra's Bauble or Mox Amber. So it's essentially a Storm deck. Um, we do have a few cards with the Storm ability on them, which what Storm does is for every other spell you've cast this turn, you could get that additional copy of that spell. So if we could get this up to, say, 4 power by casting 4 spells the turn it comes out, we can then use that 4 mana in order to cast another copy and get those additional spells off that as well. But that's the general overview of the deck. Let's get into the cards that are in here. We have Arcane Signet, because we're going to need plenty of mana in order to do plenty of things with this deck, but also it's essentially a spell by the time you're done casting it. Bergie, God of Storytelling. Whenever you cast a spell, add red mana. So, once again, another source to add mana. And creatures you control boast twice during each of your turns rather than once as well. So that's fun there as well. And also, with that additional mana, it allows us to storm off a little bit more. It does also have the other side where it's a legendary artifact for 5. You tend not to use this side, but you can discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. This way, if you run out of cards in your hand, you always have something to do. Felwar Stone for that mana. Helm of Awakening to make our stuff cost less to cast. This way we could, if something is like 1 cost, essentially, we'll make it free. His Felwar Stone and Arcane Signet, like I said, they tap for mana and they only cost 2 to cast, so you essentially net 1. Is it Signet for that mana as well? Lotus Petal, it's a free spell, so easy thing to cast, and also gives you mana, so it's a net positive on mana there. Mind Stone, another source of mana. Mishra's Bauble, a free spell to cast, allowing you to get a little bit of draw power off that as well, but it's more so the free spell that we want to cast in order to get Vivi's power up higher and do that little bit of burn damage. Mox Amber, same thing. Sapphire Medallion, additional cost reduction. 10 sides of Binding Top. This way we can decide what we want to cast, when we want to cast it, by rearranging the top cards of our deck with it. Soul Ring, positive mana with that one. Always good to see. Talisman Creativity. Once again, same thing as Mind Stone, Arcane Signet. Wayfarer's Bauble. It's a 1 cost, so it'll be able to get you a start for Vivi there. And eventually it'll get us an extra land. Since we're in red and blue, we don't essentially have that many ways to, get lands. And then for the creatures we run, we do want mostly non-creatures, so we only run 17 creatures in here total. We have Archmage Emeritus. It allows you to draw cards. Always good to see. You get to go off with the spells that you have in your hand, and then you get the additional spells. It's not once per turn, so you get to keep on doing it. Archmage of Runes, cheaper to cast your stuff, and that additional draw power. Same thing with Archmage. Love to see additional cards in our hand. Coruscation Mage, so we need a way that we're going to be able to win in this deck. The way that we have to win in this deck is by dealing that burn damage for each spell we cast in order to burn out our opponent. Vivi does the same thing, so we have a few things that do that in order to make sure that, we have some way to win and not just a way to cast a bunch of spells. Firebrand Archer, same thing as Coruscation Mage. Coruscation Mage, thankfully, the Offspring ability could get 2 damage per turn, which is nice. Gearston Storm, Kelemorph, it benefits off of all these cards that deal to 1 damage per turn, and Vivi's ability as well, in order to deal an extra 2 damage to that permanent or player. So yeah, we're essentially dealing 3 damage when we're meant to be dealing just 1, which is nice to see. Goblin Electromancer, cost reduction, Gutter Snipe, 2 damage to each opponent, so we don't get the benefit off Gearston, but we do get that 2 damage to each opponent. Where were we? Harmonic Prodigy. We get a powerless ability, so something that could swing in, something that could protect us if we're at a certain point of the game where people are swinging on us, and, we have plenty of spells in our hand to cast because we keep getting that draw power. And if an ability of a shaman or another wizard happens, it happens an additional time. So, Vivi's a wizard, Coruscation Mage is a wizard, Archmage of Runes is a wizard, so additional draw power, additional damage, additional a whole bunch of stuff. Always good to see on that. Hullbreaker Horror, we're going to be casting plenty of spells. And, sometimes you do get to swing in with Vivi because it doesn't tap for its ability, and it'll have plenty of +1/+1 counters on it. So if we need that final push, we could bounce all of our opponent's stuff back to their hand and then, swing in for game. Casted Flamebreaker, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, deals an additional damage to each opponent. What was the second? Whenever Wizard or Shaman. So yeah, this one is a Shaman. So we get that additional damage. We also get that Gearson tapping off that. So that's nice. Niv Mizzet Visionary, the additional draw power when we deal the burn damage. So cast a spell, deal the damage with Vivi, get a draw, get an additional spell to cast. Keep on going. We don't run more than one Niv Mizzet in here because we're not trying to go infinite. Ragavan, in order to steal our opponent's cards, have additional spells to cast. Stormcatch Mentor, Prowess, also making our stuff cost less to cast. So there's something good to see there. Tandem Lookout, whenever Tandem Lookout is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. So, have it linked with like Coruscation Mage, and then you keep on drawing every time you cast a spell. And then, or Niv Mizzet, the Emperor of Palamecia, a little bit of a mana dork there for 2 mana, and whenever he casts a non-creature spell, if at least 4 mana is spent to cast it, put a +1/+1 counter on its creature, and if it has 3 more +1/+1 counters on it, transform it. It transforms into the Lord Master of Hell. When this creature attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard. So we don't really have too many ways to transform it in this deck because we run mostly cheap spells. But it is good for that mana, and if we do eventually get off to that transformation, we're going to have plenty of spells in our graveyard to do plenty of damage with. Veyran, Voice of Duality, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, +1/+1 until end of turn, essentially Prowess. If you casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes an ability to happen, it happens an additional time. So Vivi gets those additional counters, we deal additional damage, we draw those additional cards. All fun stuff. All stuff that's fun for us, at least. And then for we gotta get to enchantments first, I was gonna say, to get to instants and sorceries, but we almost missed a column. For our enchantments, we have Curiosity. Whenever an enchanted creature deals damage, draw a card. So, just a little bit of draw power. Vivi's gonna be big enough where it could deal a little bit of damage. Ophidian Eye, Flash enchanted creature, deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. So, attach it onto Vivi, get that additional draw power every time you cast a spell, and then, have additional spells cast. Oh, sorry, wait. Yes, my apologies. This isn't combat damage. This is damage. So, same thing as Curiosity Eye. Ophidian Eye. Mystic Study, draw power. I always like to see it. I don't run it in every deck, but, one where you need plenty of spells in your hand, it feels appropriate. Dazzling Storm, all of our spells have Storm. So, this way, we keep on casting. We'll get to a certain point where, we have 20 counterspells on one card. Underworld Breach, all of our instants and sorceries in our graveyard have Escape, so we can keep casting them again when we've already casted them. Always fun stuff to see. And Herbrest, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, deal that damage. We like dealing that damage, and you get the additional red mana in order to keep on going. We do run mostly blue spells, is the only thing with this, so sometimes that red mana doesn't always come in handy, but, you like to see mana, and if we need a blue mana, we'll tap Vivi for it. Let's go on and scroll on over to the second half of the deck. So, for our instants, we'll go instants, Planeswalkers, instant sorceries, Planeswalkers, lands, because we always like to do lands last. So for our instance, we have an offer you can't refuse. Our opponents are going to be trying to find ways to get rid of Vivi just because he is a big threat. So let's make sure they can't do that by casting counter spells. This will also help us get Vivi's ability off, making it not tap for more mana, being able to use its ability to get more mana. Same with Arcane Denial. Brainstorm is essentially a free spell to cast because you get a little bit of draw power off it, and you get to choose which of the 3 cards on the top of your deck you want. It's 1 mana. we could afford that 1 mana. Because, well, sorry, the reason I say it's free as well is because we cast it while we have Vivi on the board. Vivi gets that +1/+1 counter, allowing us to tap for that blue mana. I know I keep saying tap, but I don't mean tap, so if I say it from now on, I'm not going to correct myself. Consider, same thing, Surveil though, draw a card. If we need a card in the graveyard for some other ability, like Underworld Breach, we can get in the graveyard if we need it. Counterspell, same thing as Arcane Denial, but this one's actually just called Counterspell. Same thing with Fierce Guardianship and Force of Will. Flu Storm and Flu Storm as well. Let's scroll on down. Frantic Search, draw 2, discard 2, untap Druid lands. So it's essentially a free spell because you untap the Druid lands that you spend to cast it. Gut Shot deals 1 damage to target creature or opponent. This one you only have to pay 2 life, you don't necessarily have to pay any mana for. So you essentially get that free mana onto Vivi when you could have used it to cast the spell as well. Mana Drain, free mana, counterspell, yeah, good to see. Mystical Tutor, get that spell that we need from our deck on top of the deck when we want to win the game. Opt, draw a card, free, 1 blue mana. Pongify, removal, because we don't have that many creatures, so if our opponent has like something big that we can't deal with, we need something to deal with it. If we didn't have the, multiple counter spells in our hand by that point. Pyretic Ritual, in order to get that additional mana, we spend 2 to cast it. We essentially get 4 off it because of Vivi's ability. Seething Song, we spend 3 to cast it, essentially get 6 off of it with Vivi's ability. Snap, free spell to cast because it untaps the lands, but also you go positive on mana because of Vivi's ability. Swan Song, another counterspell. There's a lot of counterspells in this deck now that I'm reviewing it more. Blasphemous Act for a board wipe. Like I said, we don't have that many creatures, so if our opponent has a token deck, we need some way to get rid of those tokens. Gitaxian Probe, look at target player's hand, draw a card. Free because it's the same as Gut Shot, where we get to use the 2 life rather than the 1 mana. We essentially go positive on mana with that. Grape Shot, this one has the Storm ability on it. Like all of our spells can, like with 1,000-Year Storm. So it gets Storm and Storm if we have that on the field. So say if we cast 5 spells, rather than just dealing the 1 damage, it deals that 5 damage instead. Jessica's Will, add red mana for each card in target opponent's hand. So our opponent has 7 cards in hand. We essentially get 8 mana with Vivi's ability. And you also get to exile some cards from the top of your deck in order to have cards that you can keep on playing. We have Mizzix's Mastery. Exile all the cards from your graveyard with the Overlord cost in order to be able to cast them for free. This way you can go on and storm off with that. Ponder. Top 3 cards of your deck, put them back in any order, draw a card. Essentially same as Brainstorm, just as a sorcery, not an instant. And we go neutral on mana with Vivi's ability. Preordain, once again, neutral mana. Except scry 2 instead of Surveil, like Consider. Once again, sorcery speed. Rite of Flame, add 2 red mana, then add red mana for each card named Rite of Flames in each graveyard. It's just going to be the 2 mana, but it's going to be 3 mana with Vivi's ability, but still it's positive on mana. It gets us there for the storm count. Strike It Rich, create a treasure token, so aka neutral on mana, but you go positive on mana if you have Vivi on the board. Will of Jeskai, each player discards their hand and draws 5 cards. Sometimes we don't like what's in our hand, so we need new ones. And instant sorcery cards in your graveyard gain flashback until end of turn. That's the main ability that we're looking for. So we could, use our free spells again. May as well. And Windfall, a little bit of draw power when we don't like our hand. Say if our opponent has 7 cards, we only have the 1. Get rid of that 1, get 7. It's a good time to see. Then we have Ral, Crackling Wit. Whenever you cast a spell, put a +1/+1 counter. Sorry, not +1/+1 counter. Loyalty counter. No, yeah, it's loyalty counter. So we get that pretty easily. He starts at 4. We just need to cast 6 spells, and we'll get the ultimate ability. Create a 1/1 Otter token with prowess words, +1, -1, draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards. Good for that draw power too. But its ultimate is draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, they have Storm. So, same thing as I was explaining with 1,000-Year Storm. But yeah, that's the deck there. Make sure you leave what you think of the deck down there in the comment section. I'm just going to scroll through the lands because I always like to say if you don't have to spend $222 on lands, especially not for like a $21 land. But I just like to, give like the optimal example of what you can run in the deck here. But yeah, like I said, if you have your own little tips or tricks on how you'd run this deck, how you'd improve, make sure you leave it down there in the comment section. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I hope you stay tuned for the next one. I believe the next one we're going to be doing is the Sephiroth video. Thanks for watching.